Okay, so your export strategy, an overview. We've had a little chat about Netflix and all the SVODs. The networks I describe as networks are the Disneys, Nickelodeons and Warners of this world that are changed, that are evolving, and the AVODs, and then key financing, co-producing and tax credit territories. This will be expanding upon in this session as Natalie and Andrew bring us their experience from the front line. Can we have the next slide, please? So, as you've probably heard, the networks are going through upheaval. They've taken their business models totally online. Disney are even removing channels, their cable channels, formerly known as cable channels, in certain territories. And we've seen the emergence, as we were saying earlier, of new players, of Peacock, of HBO Max, who are very, very aggressively looking for content, and now Amazon Kids Plus in 5 territories, UK included, I believe, and Germany, and looking to roll out worldwide. And then, of course, you have for older audiences, Crunchyroll has become a very big player, and Apple TV Plus. I'm not really sure what their actual editorial line is, but they are acquiring content and also big brands and really beautiful features. I can give you a couple of examples of what Netflix are doing. They have a very close relationship with Aardman, a multi-year pact with Nickelodeon, high-profile features such as Klaus and the Willoughbys, and I Lost My Body. In terms of adult animation, you all know Castlevania, Big Mouth, and their venture into the anime market with the global rights to Studio Ghibli catalogue. They have 200 million subscribers more or less now, which has not had potential exposure for properties. Disney Plus, Disney Star acquiring originals and also have their incredible Marvel, Pixar and Disney catalogues. A major success, of course, last year being Soul. HBO Max is very strong young adult content, launching with Adult Swim shows such as Rick and Morty, and exclusively the 4 specials for Adventure Time. Amazon, SpongeBob, Dora the Explorer, Shaun the Sheep, and also adult series such as Undone, beautiful animation series, now backing kids with Amazon Kids Plus. Hulu, that you might not know so well, houses many what they call blue chip shows, family shows, including Family Guy, Bob's Burgers, Futurama, and King of the Hill. Just to give you a snapshot of the kind of content they're looking for, if you didn't already know that. Can we have the next slide, please? So I'm just going to pick out a few territories that you might be curious about or looking at. Don't forget that the key information will be included in the takeaways. There are lots of links to different funding organizations and also the different DIT contacts in these territories. Could we have a look at the next slide, please? So, contrary to popular belief, there's an incredible amount of financing available in the US, notably for American producers and creatives. But the talent pool is absolutely astounding. And there are a number of methods and approaches you can use. The DIT has a very, very strong presence in the States, so I would definitely reach out to them, and we'll be putting all their contact details in the toolkit. Can we next slide, please? Now, Canada. Totally bewildering. I have 10 pages of contacts and links. All different regions have their own funding system. There's different tax credits everywhere. Someone who really understands how things work in Canada is Andrew, and he's going to talk about his experience on working on a Canadian co-production. So could you take it away, Andrew? Next slide, please.
There we go. There we go. Perfect. So yes. So I mean, I have worked in Canada for many years. I produced a series called Robozuna, which was an ITV Netflix show where we produced it in Montreal. And historically, I've done a lot of work with Canada because of all of the territories worldwide, they are often the easiest culturally to co-produce with in terms of time zones, shared cultural references, sense of humor, language, all of those things really help. And most importantly of all, unfortunately, is the money. And ultimately you co-produce because you need to raise finance. And so the Canadian tax structure and incentives is among the best in the world. They really do have a an amazing amount of finance available for production. Just to give you an example of a project I have at the moment, which is a reboot of CoProduction 5. We've redeveloped this as both a preschool series and a feature film. One thing to note is that not every territory internationally will co-produce under an official treaty for television. Some of them, some of the official treaties that the UK has are for feature film only. That doesn't mean you can't produce with that territory. It just means you need to find a different structure. And the treaties are a very good shortcut and an easy way of co-producing. But there are plenty of other ways you can get around it and just do an unofficial co-production if needed. But Canada is a territory where you can co-produce television and film very easily. We selected a partner in Montreal called Saturday Animation. They are a very experienced animation studio. They're part of Digital Dimension, who are an Emmy Award-winning VFX facility. Montreal is a kind of relatively small place, and so you can go and visit and get to know people and go out for lunch. And for me, the relationship started in 2016. We met them when we were looking for a studio for Robozuna. We kept in contact. I kept meeting them at Kids Screen. I was in Montreal on a regular basis for other projects and would always pop in and say hello. We'd go for lunch. And we got to the point where we knew each other relatively well. We were both looking to work on a particular kind of project. And CoProduction ended up being the right project at the right time with the right partners. And so we agreed to jointly develop this. And as an animation studio, they've been working on the designs and the animation. And I've been working on the stories and the concepts and the overall structure. And so this is still in financing at the moment. We're pitching this right now. But the intended work split is that we will do all the pre-production, the scripts and the storyboards, and animation will be in Canada. And then we'll take it back and we'll do the post-production. And in that way, we maximize the tax credits. We utilize the skills that we both have, where we are both strong and have the expertise. And therefore, both parties get the most out of the co-production. Ideally, we are, once we've secured all the financing, we'll both be responsible for raising elements of finance. As Justine has said, the Canadian landscape is very complex, and so having a local producer that knows everyone, that has a reputation in the industry and has all those connections is essential. And then it means that you're maximizing the value from that co-production territory. As animation takes a long time to produce, then it's really, really important that you get to know each other and that you work well together. And so it is about making sure that those relationships are as good as they can be. Otherwise, there will be very difficult times ahead. Back to you, Justine, I think.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. That's wonderful. Sharing so much and so generously. We do have a question on Canada in terms of ownership models with Canadian studios. And just generally, if you can answer this in a couple of words, if you can. It's something that...
Yes, I mean, there's two models in Canada. One is a co-production where you can access financing as a Canadian production, essentially, and one is a straight service deal. A service deal, it means you can just go and spend money in Canada and there will be tax credits. I would say if a studio is wanting a share of the IP, you have to ask why. Personally, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. If somebody is going to feel that they're invested in the IP, that there's a benefit to them, then perhaps there will be more flexibility. There will be more care. There will be the A team, if you will, of the animation service provider working on your show. It's really about, you know, what is in it for them. If they feel that they're getting really pushed on the budget, maybe the quid pro quo is they have a slice of the IP. Or, but I think it's really about saying, you know, are they a partner? You know, what is it that the relationship needs? And sometimes giving a studio a small share of the IP is part of the relationship and is part of everyone committing to the fact that, you know what, there'll be times when people will work late, they will do weekends, they will, go over budget, they will invest, and actually they're just working to really push it.
Thank you, Andrew. We're going to have to move on because we could talk about Canada for hours and hours. Could you show the next slide, please? Thank you so much for sharing, Andrew. We can pick up on any additional questions at the end of the session. Okay, I just wanted to have a look at very quickly at different territories in the Asia Pacific. Australia, of course, Malaysia as the only country in Asia that has any kind of funding financing provided by the government, and China, especially as we're having a closer look at that with Natalie a bit later. Could we have a next slide, please? So Australia, Screen Australia, incredible, was probably the equivalent of a mix between the DIT and Animation UK, and all of the genres of programming. They have grant support for development, production, co-production, licensing and marketing. And also the producer offset, which is very important. They're currently changing the rules and regulations in Australia, but for the time being, there's a 30% rebate and 40% on features. They are excellent service providers. And don't forget New Zealand. And New Zealanders, Kiwis and Aussies are interchangeable in terms of co-production between their countries in terms of eligibility points. I'm not saying they're interchangeable as people, but in terms of eligibility, they are. In addition to what Australia can provide, New Zealand can provide an additional 20% on post-production rebate. Wonderful funding, financing, servicing, incredible territory. Can we see the next slide, please? So it's interesting to see as well the different looks and feels in terms of design. MDEC, which is definitely the equivalent of the DIT in Malaysia, has been around since 1996. They're part of the Ministry of Communications and Multimedia Malaysia. They provide grant support and they also provide cash rebates, and those don't have to be reimbursed by the producers. Very interesting servicing territory, incredible talent, very hardworking, lovely people. Can't say enough good things about Malaysia. They also have a film fund, an incentive called FIMI, which is a 30% cash rebate on all qualifying Malaysian production expenditure. So definitely worth looking at in terms of servicing studios, or even if you want to co-produce with your own IPs. Next slide, please. So we come to China and Natalie's experience from the front line of working with Chinese partner. Take it away.
Thanks, Justine. So yes, so this is a new IP that we're currently pitching to market. It's called Battle of the Bugs, and it's an originals co-pro with Alpha Group, which is one of China's largest and most successful entertainment and toy companies. I guess the challenge for us in this scenario was that we needed to meet Alpha Group's commercial remit to produce a very toyetic-driven property, whilst at the same time balancing the cultural expectations of the Chinese market and delivering a show that's going to resonate with a global kids market, because those cultural differences can be stark at times. And then additionally to that, whilst there is a UK-Chinese treaty, Alpha very much wanted to ensure that the program qualified as a original Chinese content. So that meant that 50% of the production needed to be done in China and 50% of that spend needed to take place in China. So in terms of a deal structure, it was something that we were working with them at a very early stage. The way that the project first came about was that Simon Nicholson, who's the creator, he's the head writer on PJ Masks, he came up with the idea, he pitched it to Alpha, they loved the content, felt that it would be super work for them in terms of their commercial output, because they love robots and robot bugs appeal to them exceptionally. And then Simon and Alpha then came to us together and said, right, we've got this idea, how can we develop it with you? And we worked with them from very early stage on the commercial world building, the concept art, the characters, the editorial side of things, to produce a show that's targeted at 6 to 10 kids and is very much an adventure comedy. And comedy is key for this. And there isn't as much opportunity as there was a few years back for kind of ostensibly boy-led action series. So I think adventure comedy, it can be challenging, and we wanted to make sure that we were kind of really making sure that we had a really strong appeal for the marketplace internationally if we were going to try and get that away. So it's very much a strategic partnership. We have structured a deal whereby there is a 50-50 ownership split between Jellyfish Originals and Alpha. Alpha look after Chinese and Asian rights, and Jellyfish Originals look after rest of world, and that's across the board in terms of CP, as well as international media and distribution. Obviously, Alpha will be the master toy partner and drive that, and we get a share in toy royalty. But that was a really strong and a healthy position for us to be in, first of all, because the 50-50 partnership meant that Alpha committed a certain level of cash investment into the production budget, and we match that with a non-cash investment, which is made up of UK tax credits, deferred production fees, deferred commission for any of those pre-sales that I'm able to secure, anchor broadcast commitment, and a level of sweat equity. So we have got a show which is already 60% financed. So actually, if we're clever with an anchor broadcaster and a few key pre-sales and possibly a distribution advance if needed, we could move to greenlight pretty quickly. And whilst Jellyfish obviously as a studio is an animation studio, in this scenario what we've agreed is that we will do the pre-production and the post-production, but the heavy lifting of the CGI animation will take place in China, and we'll put someone on the floor in China, and we have a great local kind of intermediary that's able to kind of give us assurances and guarantees that that's going to be managed in a really good way, so that we don't compromise any quality of production in terms of the CG expectation that there is from us as the studio.
Fabulous. Wow. I tell you what I'll do. If anybody has any questions for you, Natalie, about China or the work you do in terms of co-productions, I'll just go through the next slides very quickly till we get to the end of the module. This is about tax credit kings, pointing out incredible places that, I mean, of course, everybody knows Ireland, the amazing talent in Ireland, and the wonderful tax credit for animated film and television, which is called Section 481, and how that can deliver up to 32% of eligible Irish spend. Now, outside of Dublin, there's a new thing called Uplift, which is 5%. So that's pretty much equivalent to 37% tax credit within Ireland. Worth checking out. We'll put all the links and information on the takeaways. Can we see the next slide, please? Incredible system in Belgium, and wonderful talent, award-winning talent, as you can see, very eclectic. They're very prolific, and they have a certain reputation for comic book adaptations being extremely creative and risk-taking. For a country that has the equivalent population of that of Greater London, which is about 11 million, I reckon, the opportunities for co-production access to funding are numerous and generous. If we can have a quick look at the next slide. There's what they call the Belgian edition, obviously written by the French. So it's everything you put together with the different funding in the region. So you've got Flemish speaking, French speaking, and then Brussels. The actual town of Brussels has its own funding. They have cultural funding, economic funding, and they also have a federal tax shelter. I'll provide that in the takeaways, and there's more information on Belgium and how to find funding with Belgian partners. Also brilliant servicing studios, very talented, and also very good at stop motion, to be noted. Next slide, please. Canary Islands. Now, they're fast-growing reputation for very low-cost servicing, an incredible tax credit, which is now fixed at 50% on eligible spend up to the first €1 million, which goes down to 45% after that, which still ain't bad. And in case anyone is thinking of moving to a lovely temperate climate, the corporate tax rate is 4% in the Canaries. Woohoo! It is a very young industry there, and studios have varying reputations for quality, both in 2D and 3D, but they are extremely competitive in terms of pricing. A number of Spanish studios have set up shop in the Canaries, such as Anima Kitchen, or Anima as they're now called, currently working with Aardman on Brave Bunnies. And they've also set up their own schools. They have training schemes and created like effectively is a school to feed their studio in Canary Islands. So it's going very, very fast. Could we have the next slide, please? So there we have it. That's our new export strategy, very succinctly. There are lots more territories, of course, that offer lots of different tax credits, rebates, breaks, funding, financing. The key, I think, everywhere is to find the right partner, and those partners will fast track you, and they have the relationships you can build on.